Good evening, everyone. We're going to get our meeting started. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. We respect and recognize the First Nations within whose unceded lands the village of Kaslo is situated, including the Taha, the Sinixt and Silks people, and the Indigenous and Métis residents of our community. So we're going to do a couple of things, one thing differently. I'm going to schedule, because we anticipate that it'll be a little longer meeting, as close to 7:30 as possible. I'm going to call for a recess so everybody can get up and stretch their legs, use the washroom, get a drink of water. Yeah, just to be clear. Yeah, so I think that will help, people can get refocused. And the other thing, I don't know whether a lot of you are probably on Facebook, others may not be, but I don't know whether you were aware that last week I was in Victoria for a few days, because I was a jury member for the BC Achievement Awards, and as a jury member, I was down there to participate in the awards ceremony last Wednesday, where Rick Valentine received an award. So, and I had put it on Facebook, but just for people who didn't know that. So that was for his work up in Argenta. And I had no idea the extent of what he had done until I read the nomination. But of course, I couldn't say anything. So it was very, very exciting. And he was so pleased to receive the award. Very well deserved. So. All right, so we'll get on with our meeting. So can I have the motion to adopt the agenda of the May 13th meeting? Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Leaflet. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And welcome back, Councillor Lang.
Nice to be back.
And adoption of the minutes for the April 22nd council meeting and the May 8th special meeting. So the recommendation is that the minutes be adopted as presented. If there's no errors or omissions, we can move them both as a block. Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. Discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. So we have no delegations this evening, and our information items. There's my mayor's report with a bunch of attachments supporting the information that is in the report, and things that I feel are of interest for the community and for council and staff. So are there any questions on any of those items? All right, so we'll move into council reports. Any members? Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, I did submit a written report. So rather than basically, it was a report about the Association of Kootenai Boundary Local Government, the conference that we went to in Kimberley a week and a half ago. And so just what I gathered out of that, what kind of information I got and my impressions of that. But it is written, and maybe it'll be on the next agenda for people to read, but rather than more of them now, they can read it later.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I just sent my report from AKBLG, so hopefully that will be on the next council package. But I just like to say that I really appreciate the opportunity to go. I found there was a lot of value, and I appreciate the opportunity to represent Kaslo and cast some important votes so that we can help bring priorities forward for UBCM for our region. And there were a lot of sessions I really enjoyed, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. And there's more detail as to the things I attended and some of my thoughts in that report for those who are interested.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Beaver?
Just that this weekend for May Days, the arena is sponsoring the beer garden. So we're trying to raise money for our chiller, which we will need to replace in 2 years. So please come down. And we're also celebrating our 50th anniversary. So,
All right. Thank you for that, Councillor Beaver. Councillor Lang?
Nothing to report.
Right. Then committee meetings. I chair this committee, but Councillor Bird, would you like to report on the Recreation Grant Committee meeting?
Through the chair, sure. We are the people that were on our committee. So you were the chair. I was the councillor who was appointed to that committee. And there was also Derek Apple and Lynn Goldsboro and Ken Butt. And we went through all the applications that were passed to us, and we checked off you know, that they had submitted all of the pertinent materials that are required, like financial reports, and basically reviewed what they were asking funding for against our policies, like why do we fund and what sorts of things do we fund. And what we ended up with is
Well, that's a resolution later, but I just wanted you to give, so you could give a report on the meeting itself.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
okay.
because we do have the resolution, but I thought we would give you the opportunity to report as a committee member. Thank you for that. So we'll move to staff reports. CEO Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. There's several items to give you updates on. One would be council strategic priorities related to advocating to FortisBC for reliable power supply. So that's what we've got on the piece of paper there. Staff had a conversation with FortisBC, who let us know that obviously they track the frequency and severity, length of power outages in Kaslo, and the data certainly indicates that the power supply is more reliable than ever, which makes good sense. I don't think that's a surprise. They also added some commentary that 20 years ago or so, there was 2 Fortis BC employees in Kaslo, and they're not here anymore. They're effectively based out of Castlegar, but even if they were here, they wouldn't have had the capacity to respond to the type of disturbances that we experience in Kaslo, which are typically trees falling on power lines. That's a major disturbance, and so they have to be dispatched out of Castlegar. But they did comment that they actively clear the land around power lines on the right of way, and often have agreements with landowners that are adjacent that might have land which is at a higher elevation than the power lines. And it's typically those trees that are falling down and causing the disruption. So they often have agreements with them in place to clear those trees, and can't do it everywhere with every property owner. And certainly it's not always feasible when terrain is quite a bit higher than the power lines below. So it's just the terrain we live in. It's a rugged environment, and they do the best they can to make it as reliable as possible. One of the things that I think was mentioned at the AKBLG, and certainly was mentioned during presentation at a local government conference, was that it's important that the community has a 72-hour emergency kit available. You know, food, and you know, maybe it means they have a generator or something so that we're not caught off guard. And that's not simply because of trees falling on power lines, it's also because of the increased wildfires that we're experiencing. So just thought it's worth mentioning. One, giving that update to council that we've advocated, and 2, to make sure it's out there in the public that 72-hour kit is a good idea. We have 3 job postings that are active right now or in process. One's for the Fire Smart Coordinator position, so those interviews are being scheduled. The Director of Finance and Corporate Services position is open until filled. We reposted it on the Civic Info website, so we'll continue to recruit for that. And then we have our summer worker. There's an interview that's going to occur shortly, and we'll get them hopefully working in early part of June. An update on the thrift store. We've contacted our lawyer and asked them to draft an agreement between the village and the thrift store, as well as the public notice of disposition, to make sure that we're following proper process. So once that agreement is signed, we'll provide an update to council. And when it comes to the janitorial services contract, the council considered at its last meeting, same update. We're having an agreement being developed, and we'll provide you with an update once it's been finalized. On the finance side, you'll note that there is a first quarter financial report in your package. That's been thinned down from previous quarterly reports we've received, which also include kind of a planning update and a capital project update, strategic priorities, or sorry, council's measures and objectives update. So those are not in there. We've only given you the financial report. You can expect an update on the other items, in particular at the June 10th meeting. We're going to have our manager of strategic initiatives attend and provide council an update on all the projects that we have on the go. For May days, staff have been busy washing Front Street and preparing for the event. Fire Smart is going to participate in the parade alongside a village vehicle. And so the question came to mind, would council like to ride in the electric truck or walk alongside and hand out candy? And don't necessarily need to answer it right now, but certainly I wanted council to be given an opportunity to be in the parade if that's of interest. So perhaps even after tonight's meeting or tomorrow, feel free to let me know if you'd like to be in the parade. And I think the mayor sometimes you're already in it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jazz Fest staff met with organizers for the 2025 event. They're awaiting confirmation of availability for camping. Otherwise, there's no major changes from previous years. And a meeting between the event organizers, fire, police, etc., will be coordinated probably in June. So we'll have that meeting that typically occurs before the event. Kaslo Racket Club, I believe council is aware that they had a turnover of their board, and so staff met with the remaining members to ensure there's some continuity and that they have access to the courts. So that's all been taken care of, and they will elect a new board any day now. Active Transportation Network Plan. The plan is for the consultant to come to council and present the plan at the May 27th meeting, and you'll be provided with a copy of that plan in advance so you have time to review it. The other planning project we have on the go is the South Kaslo Development Plan. So the Ideas Fair stakeholder meetings are scheduled for May 12th, and then council to get to meet the consultant. Sorry.
Yesterday.
Well,
27,
yeah.
27, yeah.
Thank you. The CAO Council Joint Report. So, yeah, end of May there, and you'll receive a background report in advance. Staff have also met with WildSafe, so you might have met Erin last year. She's a fantastic gal, and we talked about the upcoming season: rats, bears, turkeys, bats, fruit trees, compost, and garbage cans. We even talked about making sure she's connected with the community forest and the community garden. You know, often we have, they have an initiative with respect to pollinators. Then we have Fire Smart that's got an initiative, for fire safe vegetation, and certainly wild safe falls in and touches all of those things. So just want to make sure that everyone's aligned and working on the same wavelength. And the last couple items would be, there's going to be a connection to the sewer system on 5th Street the week of May 18th. No major interruptions expected. And there'll be a water connection on Galena Avenue, the week of May 26th. Again, no major interruptions expected. And the final report will be on the UV treatment system. There's a site tour for contractors that are interested in doing the installation of the reactors, as well as plumbing, electrical. So that's May 20th. And then bids for that installation contract will close on June 6th. Thank you, Mayor Hewitt.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the CEO on his report? Councilor Lucas.
Mr. Chair, do we ever meet with BC Hydro? I mean, I know for this is our provider in Kaslo, but what happens in BC Hydro's land affects us as well?
I have not met with BC Hydro, and I'll make a note to challenge staff and figure out what's a good way to get in touch with them.
I don't know if it's worth it. I can never remember if BC Hydro owns the land or the lines and Fortis rents them, or how that works, but Portis can do what they want in Kaslo, but if things happen in BC Hydro land, then it's not gonna help us any. So, as long as they're doing mitigation and stuff as well.
Mr. Brown.
Through the chair, I have read, that BC Hydro are looking at during wildfires. They've been reaching out to some communities to let them know that when a wildfire is approaching, if it's particularly dry, they may cut power to the community. Have
So I think that will be a valuable meeting for us. So
Yeah.
I think really timely and hopefully nothing intervenes such as an emergency. And with Wild Safe, also I met with her and I coincidentally saw her the day she arrived back in town, and I'm going to connect her with Director Watson because she also serves Area D. So. All right. So then that brings us to our first quarter financial report. Are there any questions for the CAO on the report? Councilor Byrd.
Through the chair, it's more of an observation that there were more business licenses than expected, I noticed, which is cool. But no new building permits. I thought that was a surprise. At this time in the year, in the first quarter, there have been no building permits.
Chair, to my knowledge, there have been a few building permits. What part of the financial report are you referencing?
I didn't. That would be it would be in revenue. So you have like budgeted what is budgeted in terms of fees and charges. So and yeah, sorry, I can't point to it without it.
Through the chair, so what you'll receive, I believe the June 10th meeting, when we have our manager of strategic initiatives presenting, I'll be providing council an up-to-date list of building permits issued. I believe it's 5, remember them? Okay, so something like 3 or 5 have been issued for building permits already this year, which appear to be kind of the norm for the first quarter.
Yeah, I thought through the chair, I thought 0 seemed unlikely, like, or surprise to me. Okay.
On page 3 of the financial report, it's minimal, but we haven't. Oh, that's burning permits. Building permits. Yeah, it's only $450. We don't actually do much administration. Is that more to do with DBPs regarding building permits?
Correct.
Okay.
That's regional district manages the building permits. They receive all the fees. And then if there's anything the village needs to do in the way of reviewing zoning or development permits or various permits, then we'll receive fees for that.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
The other through the chair, also just that question and I should know the answer probably. A small community protection grant of $381,400, which is not received yet, but it's unconditional funding. I'm just can you give me a context on that one?
Go ahead, unless you want to. That's an annual funding that smaller communities get, so that they can.
Okay, that is our.
Yeah.
Used to be called.
Nope, no, it's always small communities
Okay.
protection, and it's generally around the same amount, and I think it's population based, and it did go down slightly after the last census. I think as our population grows, our allotment might go down marginally because it's only for small communities. And
Got one last.
yeah,
Expenses, in the expenses where it's supplies and services, insurance costs, 553% of budgeted. What happened there?
Through the chair, so all of the insurance expense was allocated to that one account in error and needs to be redistributed out to buildings and different parts of the budget. And so I believe we just made a note that it needs to be reallocated, a portion needs to be reallocated. But at this point, staff don't have any concerns with the insurance cumulatively, even though it looks high in the one account.
right. Does anyone else have questions? Right. You, and then we've got multiple items of correspondence. Are there any items that council would like to have discussion on and perhaps make a notice of motion for a future meeting? Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I would like to pull the correspondence, Jones re-request for space in Kemble building for archives, please.
Any other items? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Brown.
The chair, I can certainly see the benefit in much of what he's saying, providing this really valuable group in our community, a safe space to be able to work and operate within. I think that there's a lot of value in what the proposal put forward is. I also recognize that we're in transition as we do some renovations there, and I'm not sure of the feasibility of doing what has been requested. But I would like to look into how we can provide them a safer space and perhaps ensure that all of the archives are being taken care of as best they can and provided a space that's dry and able to preserve them in perpetuity. So I suppose I'm just putting this forward to open the discussion as to what is feasible to be able to work with them to see how we can help to best support our archives.
I would suggest perhaps we just refer it to staff, rather than us trying to decide what situation in the Kemble building would work for them. And as you stated, with the work going on, it might not be possible in the short term, but if you want to make a motion to refer that correspondence to staff and see whether they can work, analyze the situation in the Kemble and if something else could be done for them.
Sure. I would then move that motion to direct staff to
Or just refer it to staff.
to refer
Yeah.
that correspondence to staff.
Yeah, does that work?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, a second, okay. Any discussion on referral? All those in favor? Then it's carried. And then we've received the RCMP quarterly report, and Corporal Venema hasn't reached out, so I suspect that he's busy. He usually does come and present. And then 5.7, the climate action funding, that information has been provided in response to the request to see whether the providing seeds in the pollinator garden was possible. So staff has provided that as backup because there was a request to see whether it would fit with the LGCAP funding. So yeah, that's really good.
Through the chair. So I looked at it and thought that there was definitely some aspects of that that could support getting some seeds and having them out at Kaslo's birthday. So are we supposed to prove that it is feasible to use that funding, or?
I think it was just because council asked the question, whether it was possible. I don't think we're gonna have staff go and analyze that. I think the thought was that the group might, you know, look at it and see and make the request if they want us to, or whether that's inappropriate, because is it gonna be that much? You know, it might be better to give them just a small village, a municipal grant, rather than applying for the fund, unless if it's just hundreds of dollars versus thousands of dollars.
That request didn't come from them. That was an idea I had for something we could do in Kaslo for a day, because we have limited capacity in what we can take on. So I thought we could possibly use some of that funding to buy seeds that we could hand out at Kaslo's birthday that would support what they're trying to do. So that was my thought. And then CEO Baker said, well, this is what the funding is supposed to be used for. Do you think it fits? And so I think it fits.
Do we want to refer that to our events committee? And then, because perhaps that we could look at that grant and see if it'll work for the program. And the other option would be, because we didn't expend all of our funds on the volunteer fair, we can see whether we can ask for some of that funding to be shifted to other things that the events committee puts on. Is that, to me, that seems more appropriate. You want to make that?
I'll move that we refer this to the event committee when we plan council.
We'll just refer the possibility of using LGCAP funding for purchase of seeds. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, so that brings us to question period. So we allow 15 minutes for the public to ask questions of council. Go ahead, Anne.
At your February 11th council meeting, the resolution that council declined the proposal in its current form from QP Developments passed. A revised and final concept plan addressed to the CAO and dated March 24th is included in this evening's agenda package. How is this final concept plan different from the proposal council declined?
I think perhaps we'll wait and QP in the committee of the whole will explain what the changes are. Because we can't answer for them. And I've looked at the proposal and there are not many differences, but some of it could be in the verbiage, and I think it's better to come out of their mouths unless you have something that you wanted to add, CEO Baker.
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, any further questions? I'll start it.
I understand that the village council like received something probably in excess of 200 letters addressing the proposed parking park in South Beach. The majority of the writers expressed concern or opposition that the council has issued no response to date. The RV park proponent participation on the House in November 2023, but it merely described an early version of the project and was not open to public discussion. Since then, the public has been granted only a few delegations and a time-limited committee of the whole meeting. When will the council conduct a real public meeting so that people who elected you can ask questions and express their concerns and wishes regarding the RV park proposal openly?
We have no plans at this point to conduct an open house. The proposal has just landed on our agenda again tonight, so we haven't formulated a direction yet. We'll discuss it in our committee of the whole meeting later. And we might have direction coming out of that, because we have not yet discussed it tonight. Any other? I will come back to the room, Jim. I'm just gonna check on Zoom and see if there's anyone on there. Are there any questions online? You can use the raise hand function is probably best. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, no, I've just gotten the note. There's usually I have a counselor online who can tell me I'm being too quiet, which is usually not a problem. So let me, Jesse Spears, can you hear me fine now that I've raised my voice? Okay, I'll try to speak louder then. All right. So are there any questions from members of the public who are online at this point? If you can use the raise hand function would be best, but if not, if you just want to unmute and ask your question, that would be great. Don't. I don't see anyone.
Emily does right in the middle.
I think.
No, that's the hand on the, move your mouse.
Yeah, move your mouse.
So there's a little yellow hand in the corner of the screen for a raised hand. So. There's my hand. See it in the corner up there, the little yellow hand up in the corner. So that's what I was looking for. All right. So then I think we'll go back to the room. Jim.
Yeah, so council's receiving a updated version of the proposal from how about council would hold off on the regulations to follow this development until the police have an opportunity to see it and maybe get feedback.
That will be up to council to decide later. But thank you for your question. Linda.
Yes, thank you, the chair. I'm wondering if council will be responding to any of this outreach for your submissions, proposals, because we haven't.
Well, you could imagine that would take a lot of time for staff to reply to each and every one of them. And actually they've been received for information, not as correspondence that we are responding to, because as was stated, there were like close to 200 letters that were received, and if we're, it's pretty difficult to respond to all of those. So they were received as information. If it was the one regarding making an offer to purchase, there wasn't an offer to sell, so there was nothing to respond to.
I see, because I guess it was just to keep communications open. I wasn't sure if some discussion had been happening, I don't know, in camera or whatever too. So if there's any discussion.
If there were in-camera discussions, we couldn't disclose them because they're in camera. And as I stated, there was no indication by the landowner that they were looking to sell any land. So there was nothing for us to act on.
I see. The fact that the swap had been considered on the one side, and then the South Beach Working Group, had proposed that council talk and say, let's do it the other way, we buy your land. So I just thought that would be considered.
No, because
proposal to discuss.
No. Wait, because the landowner did not indicate that they were interested in selling land unless it was as a swamp.
That's well.
So. Right, any other there? Oh, I do see someone, a hand online now. I can't see it. I can't see your name. Okay, too small. All right, Randy, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've got a question. I'm curious if council would be willing, as we contemplate another proposal from QP Developments, to undertake an actual analysis of the costs and benefits of whatever QP Developments might be proposing, given the fact that whatever they might propose, if it is in any way, shape, or form close to their initial proposal, is a potentially big deal for a very tiny place. And I, for one, as a taxpayer and a citizen of Kaslo, find it astonishing that council would even contemplate saying yes to a development of that kind of potential magnitude without any sort of economic, social, environmental, or cultural cost benefit analysis. So is this something that council would be obviously anxious to undertake before saying yes or no to any further proposals from QP Developments? That's my question.
I think that would be for council consideration. We have not received a request that, to my knowledge, none of the correspondence has been regarding doing that. And that would not come at a zero cost. So at this point, there is nothing for us to consider. Like I said, we're just going to be entertaining the delegation or the discussion with the QP Developments in our committee of the whole this afternoon or this evening. So at this point, I can't give you an answer.
Okay, thanks.
Bill, and I think he will be our last question.
My question is, does the village of Kaslo own the streets and the land that is involved in the QP developments? Does the village of Kaslo own that land, those streets?
Yes.
And wasn't the proposal from the Southeast Urban Street involved with those lands? Not the rest of it?
Okay, so I'm not, sorry, if you could rephrase the question, Bill, so I
understood that the proposal from the Southeast Urban League was for the streets that the village owns, not for the other properties.
okay, well, we already own them, so there's nothing for us to purchase.
Yeah, so if they were talking about turning those streets that the village owns into parkland.
Okay. Council has not discussed that in detail. No. We've received that correspondence. We didn't discuss the proposed, actually considering turning it into parkland. It wasn't fully discussed fulsomely in a council meeting. And yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move into business. The first item is the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And the recommendation is that the 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw number 1316/2025 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Leafwood. All those in favor? Carried. And property tax rates bylaw, recommendation is that the 2025 property tax rates bylaw number 1317/2025 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. All those in favor? Carried. Spring recreation grants. Councillor Bird did an awesome job of reporting on our meeting, and the recommendation coming out of that meeting is that the 2025 spring recreation grants be awarded as follows. JB Humphreys Parent Advisory Council, 500, Kaslo Area Senior Citizens Society, 500, Kaslo District Public Library, 500, Kaslo Baseball and Softball, 500, Kaslo Outdoor Recreation and Trails, 500, Kaslo Wild Ultra, 500, North Kootenai Lake Arts Council for 250, and Wild Turkey Cross Country Race for $500.
I'm just not sure if I should be recusing myself.
Oh.
Not around this.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just looking for guidance from staff as to whether, or maybe would it be appropriate for me to just not vote on this? As I'm the president of the Kaslo Baseball and Softball Association.
The chair would suggest to exclude yourself from discussion and voting.
Okay, so through the chair, I will recuse myself from this decision as I am the president of Kaslo Baseball and Softball Association.
Thank you.
Yep.
I hadn't read the next page and saw that, so.
I'll move those.
Moved by Councillor Leafwood and seconded by Councillor Lang. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. I knew it would be quick.
Yeah.
And just for information, there were a couple other applications which we did not approve for funding because they did not meet the funding criteria. So they were things that were not related to directly to recreation. They were ancillary, like so for food and buying things to sell as a fundraiser. So they weren't directly related to the physical activity. And these are recreation grants. And so, so next item is the Kaslo Municipal Campground Policy. Theo Baker, did you want to speak to that at all before I read the recommendation?
Maybe just provide context, Mayor Hewitt. So council's chatted with staff on 2 or 3 occasions about the policy, and staff have met with the campground operator. And so, although it's not been a perfect process, generally the policy that we've put together certainly reflects council's direction and wishes. And I believe it's generally agreeable with the campground operator, notwithstanding that comment. They might say differently, but generally they seem okay. It would make good sense to get back together annually with the campground operator in front of council and let them report on how the year has gone. And then at that time, make any tweaks and adjustments to the policy, or talk about capital projects for developing the campground, just to make sure there's direct communication between council and the operator and there's no kind of confusion or anything like that, and then should help us maintain the policy over time.
Thank you, CEO Baker. Did anyone have any questions on the attachments that have been provided? Councillor Leafwood, to the chair.
I have thought when we discussed, the changes to the policy a couple of meetings ago, that we were going to kind of keep everything the same this year and then make the changes next year. So I thought that we had decided, because Trish had already booked some camping for Jazz Fest on Scout Hall and Abbey Manor Lawn, that she was able to use them this year.
Chair, I don't recall the discussion on, I do recall the discussion of status quo. I don't recall the discussion of permitting use of the Scout Hall and Abbey Manor. And when I look at kind of the past resolutions or policy, it doesn't look to me like those 2 spaces are supposed to be used generally for camping. Certainly council can pass a resolution and say yes. And certainly though, I heard the message at the last meeting with council that they did not want camping on the Scout Hall lot or Abbey Manor.
It's only for Jazz Fest. It's not for all the time. It's only for Jazz Fest. And the reason that started was since we stopped putting camping in the ball field, then it cut down about 90 camp spots. So then she was given permission to use the Scout Home and Abbey Manor lot. So I think because she makes reservations for camping all year, like not just during the camping season. And because she'd used it already in the past, that she was able to use it this year. So I know she's made some reservations there, so I just wanted to clarify that she could still use it this year and then next year into effect if she can. I thought that's what was our discussion.
The chair, what I might suggest is consider this policy and then have the topic related to this year come back to council, or perhaps staff can chat with the campground operator, come back to council with a proposal, and then make that decision for this year through a separate resolution, but consider the policy generally at this meeting.
I'll ask you a question in relation to that. So you reviewed all of this information with the campground operator prior to it coming back to us, correct?
Correct.
And she was aware of what Councillor Leaflet was just mentioning about the former Scout Hall property.
Correct. It was not mentioned to me that there was already bookings on those
Okay.
bases.
All right.
I might go one step further and say, during my time, I advised the operator that those spaces could not be used. And so if she's booked, made reservations in those spots, it would be without the knowledge of staff and I'm assuming council. Nonetheless, certainly council can consider it as a separate resolution. Similar to, I believe, the second resolution that's a part of this business item. Just, yeah, policy is good, but let's pass resolutions as needed to tweak it for particular years or particular events or instances.
So maybe what I'll suggest is have staff on that item, have staff, because it's for the Jazz Fest weekend. It's not time sensitive that we do that tonight, if it's going to be a one-off, and just have staff communicate with the campground operator so that we know for sure that she still has those bookings in place and still requires the use of that site, rather than making a resolution that is not required. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. So there are two recommendations. The first one is that the village's camping policy be revised as presented in the staff report titled Kaslo Municipal Campground Policy dated May 5th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? And is carried. And that for the 2025 camping season only, Ring Road may be used for overflow camping without being restricted to long weekends. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Ms. Carried. Thank you. So next item is camping fees amendment bylaw 1318. Are there any questions on that before I read the recommendation? Okay, so that camping fees amendment bylaw 1318/2025 received first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And 7.6 is the 2025 Pride celebration. Sounds like it's exactly the same as last year, and there's several different recommendations, and I'll read them each individually. So that the Kaslo Community Services Society be permitted to paint a rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of Front Street and 4th Avenue on June 6th and 7th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Ms. Carey. And that 4th Street be temporarily closed between Penny Lane and Front Street to permit Kaslo Community Services Society to paint a rainbow crosswalk from 2 p.m. Friday, June 6th to 9:30 a.m. Saturday, June 7th, 2025. Moved Moved by Counselor Leawood, second by Counselor Bird. Discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. And the next one is that Mayor Hewitt and any members of council who wish to attend the 2025 Pride celebration and read aloud the land acknowledgement and proclamation. Are any council members going to be? So that would be on the 7th, for Saturday the 7th. Probably around 10ish would be my guess. And people can feel free to attend, but my plan is to be there. All right, I missed it. Were there mover and seconder? By Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Leawood. Any discussion? Oh no. Okay. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And the next one is that Kaslo Community Services Society be permitted to raise the Progress Pride flag for the month of June at the Kemble Memorial Center and the railing at City Hall, but that is only for, is that the entire month as well?
If it's the will of council.
Right. Moved by Councillor Leawood, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Those in favor? It's carried. And the last one, that a grant and aid be provided to the Kaslo Community Services Society in the amount of $60 to cover the cost of renting Legacy Park and obtaining a temporary closure permit for the 2025 Pride celebration. Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. I think everybody's hand was up at the same time. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. And our next item is the temporary street closure request for the Kootenai Mushroom Festival. The recommendation is that a portion of 5th Street, south of A Avenue and between the Langham and the Legion be temporarily closed to traffic from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday, October 11th, 2025 for the Kootenai Mushroom Festival. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Leawood. Any discussion? Oh. Councillor Brown.
Through the chair,
Sorry.
I appreciate how well organized they are.
Yeah. Yes, they're so well in advance with their requests, which
I
is
like
excellent. All right. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We had no late items. So maybe before we go into committee of whole, we'll have our recess now. I know it's only 7, but we'll take a short recess because once we get into the committee of the whole, it's a little harder to find a break, I think. So can I have a motion to recess? Okay, and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Resolve itself into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Leawood, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is carried. All right, so in committee of the whole, we only have one item of business, and that is to consider and discuss the RV park proposal that has been provided by Quality Development Properties. And so it's to consider the revised plan that's been presented and ask any questions or suggest, and have a discussion with the developer about what we may still want to see revisions on, if that is possible. So and then we'll allow QP and CTQ representatives to answer any questions for us. So if you want to come up to the table, you can do that. So we've got Dave and from CTQ and Dale from Quality Properties. Welcome to council. So and if at any time you want us to call up the council members or QP, then call up any of the documents that we've received so that the public can see them as well when we're discussing them. Please let us know, and Lee will bring them up on the screen. did you have any opening that you wanted to make before we get started?
Just, thank you for the opportunity, Mayor and Council, to carry on the discussions of the, potential development of the, former sawmill site. We've, prepared a plan that has more definition to what had previously been completed. All the previous plans were basically just block plans looking at kind of areas. The plan that was provided in March was done by our landscape architectural team. Our landscape group, we've been working with BC Parks for 20 years on park development. We've worked with BC Parks on preparing some of their documents for their how they develop parks and what the parks look like. We've also worked on a number of private RV type park scenarios. So we've got a pretty good understanding of what it takes to develop park sites. We've been working on the file for over 4 years, and we've been working with a team of experts. Ecoscape has done quite a bit of environmental work on the site, on reviewing and looking at some of the areas on the site. And this new plan reflects some further discussions we had with Ecoscape. We've also looked at the hydrology and the hydraulics of the river related to the site. We've been working with a hydrologist on that. So we've done a lot of background on looking at what the potential for the site is. I think we've done a good job in trying to ensure that the public has good and safe access along both the river embankment as well as on the fronting on the lake. We think we've provided a greater amount of foreshore protection than what was initially recommended from Ecoscape to the Ministry of Environment guidelines. So we think we've worked with all of the constraints on the site and tried to meet what the village's desires are for the area, for the provision of the public access to both the river and the lakefront. In the plan that we've produced, can you bring up that latest plan, Robert? Yeah. Bring it up so we can see it on the screen.
Would that be the letter from March 24th?
Yes.
Two images?
Yeah, the two images. Maybe the one that's where the park area is a little smaller and shows the context around it. Page 4 on the right.
Wants to zoom in?
Previous page, one that's on that. Yeah. Just for context, that's showing the black line is the QP property lines as they stand now. There's the portion on the entry, if you just moved it off the screen at the top. That's on the entry into the site, and then also the black lines are defining the property as it was. it does, this plan doesn't show the, public rights of ways that are within the site or the 188 single-family lots that are currently gazetted on the site. So that's something that we would, with this proposal, we would be looking at, and we've been in discussion with the village on how to go through a road closure for transfer of some of the public rights of ways to private lands and some of the private lands to public lands that would be both public access lands and then public lands for green space. So that's where we're at with the plan right now. One of the difficulties that we've got is we're in a rezoning application and we're in a disposition of public right-of-way discussion. That's really, I don't know if an application is the right word. It's the transfer of lands that are related to the rezoning. As you're aware, the site is currently zoned industrial, and we're proposing to revise the zoning so that it covers both the ability for the campground, covers the protection of the public rights of ways, and then the steep embankment lands that are between the RV site and the golf course. Those lands would have covenants placed on them that would be no build, no disturb covenants to protect those embankments. All of that work, once if council chooses to rezone the property, then we would be going into a comprehensive development proposal that would further refine this. This is still a conceptual plan because we don't have an approved land use that's been accepted by council at this point. So that land use will potentially affect the plan. So we're in a bit of a catch-22 in that we have done more than we typically would at this point in the process with this conceptual drawing. This is pretty close to what we would use to then create a development permit package. And that's more than we normally do with rezoning. That's why our previous submissions just showed more block plans related to what the site could be. So we're hoping to be able to proceed with both the land transfer agreement and then the subsequent rezoning of the parcel from industrial to the public and open space, the public access from the highway, and then the RV site itself. So that's a quick synopsis. And if any members of council or the mayor or staff have any additional questions, we'd be more than happy to speak to those. One of the things that's pretty unique with this, and I've worked on a few road closure plans, and one of the interesting things with a public right of way. The public rights of ways were established on this site the same as they were over the village at the turn of the century for the provision of single-family home sites. That plan was not all that terrific in that some of those lots are in the river, some of them are in the lake, some of them are on 50% slopes. They were done in London by a guy with a leather schmuck sitting at a big table. So the disposition of public rights of ways, those rights of ways are solely for the use of providing access from public rights of way such as the highway to individual lots. So those 188 lots that are currently part of the QP site, the Village of Kaslo rights of ways that are in place that go around all those lots are there specifically to provide access to those lots. Those rights of ways cannot be a park because a park is not for access to adjacent properties. The Highway Act says there's two things that need to occur with the development of a highway. A highway has to provide access and it has to be safe. And access is to private lands. So those rights of ways that are all over the site and all over the golf course were intended for access to private parcels. And if the land use is going to change from those private parcels to something that is of a more of a consolidated nature, then those rights of ways would also need to change. And that's the process that we've entered into with the village to look at changing those rights of ways for the enjoyment of the village on one hand and the enjoyment of the adjacent landowner on the other hand. And we've gone through a financial exercise to come up with a rationale and a cost for those land transfers. Those costs and that's something that is typically dealt with in camera. So I'm not going to talk about what those valuations are because those are in camera discussion that council would normally do as part of a road bylaw. But that's integral to helping this area discharge roughly 182. We would take 188 single family lots and turn them into say three lots, one for the right of way, one for the park and open space and parking site. So that's a quick summary, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that may help the council on decisions.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Brown.
To the chair, thank you for being here. So I'm just going to be really honest with you both. When I look at this plan, I was the one who moved that we deny the plan as presented, and I'm not seeing any meaningful changes to this plan at all, which is pretty surprising to me as there's been so much public consultation and feedback. There's been feedback from council, and yet you present a plan that is basically the same thing, which to me looks like you're not hearing us. So my question is, what has meaningfully changed about this plan as opposed to the one that was brought to us already and denied? And how does this plan address any of the concerns of the public? For example, the pathway that you're providing is below the retaining wall. Were there to be people on that path and a flood were to occur, they would be trapped in there. This is something that's been brought up by our community multiple times, and yet it hasn't been addressed. I'm not seeing much of the concerns of council or the public addressed in this plan. So I'm hoping you can highlight to me what those changes are, and then just your mindset around incorporating feedback into this plan to ensure that it's representative of our community that you're trying to bring this to.
Okay, so just I'll address the retaining wall. The retaining wall is about 1 meter high, and it's 30 meters from the current high water mark of the creek. So it's creating a 30-meter public open space for access along the creek or along the river and to the lake bed. That, if there was ever an inundation of that 30-meter area, it would be from a 200-year flood. So 200-year floods don't occur within an hour or two of somebody walking down that path. So if a flood of that magnitude was happening, there would be a lot of other things going on that people being trapped would not be of a concern. And if they were trapped, they would only have to go to the lakehead. And that area is not going to be inundated. We don't have a wall. We haven't put a 1 meter wall along the lakefront between the private lands and the lakefront. So I don't think there's any scenario where someone's going to get washed away because they weren't able to go over the 1 meter change in elevation. We haven't fully determined how we're going to do that. We're planning on doing it right now. We just planned on it with a lock block, but we're potentially going to be doing it with a landscape slope that goes and creates a definition through there. We haven't got into those details yet, but we've discussed that with our landscape people. Part of it is we want to maintain as much natural land as we can, natural environment as we can. It's a site that's been fully disturbed. It was a sawmill. So a lot of the site is not natural, even along that 30-meter portion of the embankment between the river and what we're proposing to be private lands has been disturbed. We have to protect the environment, but we also have to try to enhance it when it makes sense to enhance it. And we think there'll be a number of enhancements occurring in the both public and private spaces. So I don't think there's going to be a risk of anyone being inundated with that of a flood. What we've done on the plan, the plan has, there's been a reduction in the number of RV sites. There's been an increase in the green and open space on the RV lands itself. So that's what we've changed on the RV portion of the site. And we've just provided greater details on both on-site and on the public space surrounding the RV site. If you were thinking we were going to come back with a plan that showed 10 RV lots on it, that's not happening. We'll go away and we'll leave it industrial. We'll withdraw the rezoning application because it's not viable as you can't run a campsite with that number of stalls that has a site manager, has all the infrastructure that's going to go in for the septic fuel, the water's already on site, but the infrastructure that we're going to put in, we can't. There was talk of a cost benefit analysis. That's a pretty easy cost benefit analysis. We can't do anything that makes any fiscal sense on the scale. There was a discussion at one point in one of the previous meetings about having half as many sites. It doesn't work. It's not viable as a commercial venture. Now it may be viable for a municipal venture, but as a commercial venture, it wouldn't be viable. So that's part of the reason why we haven't come back with a plan that has half as many stalls.
Michael, yeah, go ahead.
To the chair. So I suppose then my question would then be, what is the minimum amount of spots that would enable you to have a viable financial case for doing this?
What we presented.
This is the minimum.
This is what we're proposing. We still don't have a land use yet. So without having a land use fully, we've got a proposal for the land use. And in that proposal, we provided working with the village and working with other municipal authorities on how big the RV sites should be. What's the square, we've got a 200 square meter average lot size for each RV pad. That's quite a bit larger than, there's a number of these RV sites. There's a few on the island, there's a few in Shuswap. They don't have sites as large as these, but they have other constraints. So there's a reason why they're just doing them. They're very close to, they end up being very close to it. We were trying to do something that had more of a campground feel than a full, stacked RV type site feel. But until we've got a finalized rezone and a zone that we're building to, because the RV campsite zone is still part of the discussion. So until we have those locked down, but from a commercial standpoint, the viability of the site needs a substantive number similar to what we propose. I'm not saying that we won't change this plan. This plan is changeable, but it's not changeable to be half as many RV sites.
I'll go to Councillor Byrne here.
Through the chair, yeah, so this is an observation on process. When looking at the OCP, and so what we've been discussing is rezoning, sort of the timeline that we've been given talks about rezoning and subdivision prior to the development permit. And this is where I'm looking at the OCP where it says specifically within the lakefront protection DPA, no change of land use, subdivision, or site alteration is allowed without a development permit. And I know we're not talking about site alteration at this point, but if we were to rezone it, then we're changing the land use. And so I'm not sure why we are considering anything without a development permit at this stage.
If I could respond to that, if you want. So you're correct. It requires, for an alteration to occur, it requires a development permit to be approved. The land use sets the parameters for the development permit. So you don't do a development permit without having the definition of the land use and the zoning requirements within the land before you do a development. You need those in place before you do a development permit. So once we have a finalized zone, so all of the elements that are required within the RV site zone, and we have a land use for the RV site, we then go into the development permit process. And that development permit process is pretty intense. It will take the environmental work we've done, it'll take the hydraulics work we've done, it will take the landscape architecture, the civil work. All of those elements are built into the development permit. But there's a pretty substantive cost to prepare that development permit approval process.
I'm simply reiterating what I'm reading.
Yeah, and it's just in the process, the development permit will be, before any alterations are made, the development permit would be.
You have supplemented?
Through the chair, I'm just reading what I'm seeing in our OCP, which is, I understand what you are saying, and I can see that from your point of view, there's good sense to it, but it is also contradicting what we have in our OCP. I'm putting that forward, that we are embarking upon a process that is a contravention of our OCP, if in fact we're going to wait for the development permit later. I appreciate your point of view. I'm also just noting that this is not in our legislation to go that way. So I think, I don't know what the process is for altering never had to do discussions that seem to me to be in contravention of our OCP. This is a new one on me. So any advice on that one would be appreciated.
Did you, yep, if you want to answer that, that would be great.
With the chair, I'm just scanning a staff report. I believe there's a staff report from 2025 that touches on what you've identified. And so I believe what the staff report said, I can't find it right now, but staff would need clarity from our lawyer on what does that mean? Makes good sense what CTQ has said. Staff, we do not have planning expertise on staff. And so our planning slash lawyer that we've been working with would need to provide clarity on the process to be followed. But I think for me, it kind of begs the question, what's the concern that council has with what order, you know, or where in the process the development permitting occurs? Like, what's the real heart of the matter for you? Is it that you want to see the full project in detail? Is that what kind of you think your council thinks they're going to get out of the development permit process? Or is there something else that why do you want it now?
Through the chair, it's not actually that I want it now, it's just it makes me nervous to be a legislator contravening legislation. And I would definitely need support on that from a legal point of view.
Councillor Lang.
Yeah, a few questions. It sounds like there's quite a bit of paperwork lying ahead, even if council was to approve this application. So can I assume that no construction is likely to take place this summer? Or is that do you think, when do you think construction could realistically start?
There's a couple of ways that could occur. Whether there was a approval in principle and we could set some of the groundwork. I don't think we'd be in the ground with all of the services and building the RV sites this summer. We're already at this point, you know, let's call it mid-May. By the time we get through the paperwork, as you say, I don't think we'll leave this construction season. So the likelihood is that there wouldn't be any works occurring on the site this year.
Supplement
Go ahead,
to the chair. Does that mean that the Jazz Fest would have access to this land for this year? For camping?
We haven't decided.
We haven't made a decision
We
on
haven't
that
made
yet.
a decision. We're hoping to have some direction as to where we're able to go with the site. And if we can get some clarity on that, then we can start to look at making some decisions as to what happens with the site.
I'll go to Councillor Leewood because she hasn't spoken yet. Councillor
Through
Leewood.
the chair. Of the 72 sites, what percentage of that would be RVs and what would be, like you said, short-term camping?
The intent is that it would all be available for short-term camping. The plan, the current plan is roughly half of the sites would be sold as strata lots, but even those owners would have the ability to rent those sites. So we've looked at a couple of models where even if you own your site, you put it into the rental pool and the sites get booked. And so the plan is that it's going to be a short-term, available for short-term rental. If some of the owners want to stay longer, they wouldn't be able to stay a month or stay longer. But the intent is that it's for short-term, not day use, but
Right.
weekend day use.
Another question? Through the chair, 2 more points. The other was the boat launch, which seems to cause a lot of concern with the public. So it seemed like you kind of backed off on that a bit.
Well, just through the chair. We had never intended a boat launch.
Right, I'm not motor.
It's the language. Unfortunately, when you're doing any work in the foreshore that requires all the environmental permitting, it's called boat launch. And so it was the language was a bit awkward. But we were looking at potentially having a public access pier that you could get a canoe in the water, that type of use. We haven't put that in as part of this current plan. And I wouldn't want to say that we wouldn't come back at a future date and look to put in something. But if we did, it would go through a full process. Any work on the foreshore needs both municipal and provincial approvals. So there's certainly not going to be a whole lot.
Right. Hold on, just one more. Through the chair. And then the other question I had was, you'd put a time of 8 months that would be open. Is that part also of making it a viable commercial venture, or?
Well, through the chair, that's really just, there's, we looked at the campsite today, there's about 5 trailers down there today. May till October is but if no one books it in May and no one books it in October, then we have a shorter time.
Right.
What the 8 months was intended was so that it isn't set up as permanent residencies where people aren't staying through the winter.
Mhm.
So that's more what that's trying to talk to. It's not what's the, how much in the
Right.
shoulder seasons are you operating? It's to ensure that it isn't operating through the winter as residential, offset residential.
Thank you.
We'll go to Councillor Brown. I think he had his hand up before. Did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, go ahead. You were, I saw you first.
I nothing at this moment.
Oh, okay. And then Councillor Lang?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the fact that I don't think all segments of the community have been able to express how they feel about this development. We've certainly heard from a very vocal group that are against it. And the only, aside from the conflict within the OCP, the only thing I'm hearing is, I don't like it. And to me, that's not a good enough reason. In the last month or so, we've had 2 businesses that have been in Kaslo since I moved here closed down. The Selkirk College and the Pennywise. Our community is not bulletproof. We have to make concessions to encourage development if we want to keep the community viable. Our CAO has indicated that we're running an $800,000 deficit after our asset management study. That money has to come from somewhere, and I don't think it's going to come from property taxes. Not in the short term, at least anyway. So I'd like to see this project move ahead. At least get it to the point where we're voting on the rezoning. And I think if you look around, I'm sure that, and you went downtown and asked people how they feel about adding a couple hundred tourists every summer to the village, how that they would be all for it. Well, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, with all due respect, I would suggest that there have been significant reasons as to why people are against it, not just because they don't like it. There have been pages and pages and pages and description about that.
I think I'm going to
So-
rein you in from arguing amongst yourselves where we've got our delegation or our group here, and our questions really should, those kind of conversations should be held between council members. And if it's a question about the proposal, I think that's what we're here to deal with, not each individual councillor's opinion on that.
My understanding was that the committee of the whole is an opportunity for the public to see us debate this. And what I'm attempting to do is to bring transparency to this conversation so that they have an opportunity to hear what our thoughts are before we make a decision.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll state some of my largest concerns. I do believe that we do need to develop Kaslo. I do believe that we need to grow our community. concerns that have been brought up by the public that I share include our capacity for our infrastructure to be able to handle that. That includes healthcare. That includes multiple different things. As we're bringing more and more people into our community, we need to be able to safely grow that in a way that doesn't put unnecessary new strain onto our emergency services and onto the infrastructure of our community. Currently, I believe we have issues in housing where businesses are closing because they're not able to have year-round employees who are able to find homes here. I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. I feel like we need to provide housing. We need to be able, or not provide housing, but see housing grow in our community. I think we need to be able to support the growth that this proposal would create in our community in a healthy way, so that our emergency services, to be taxed, that we can be able to grow with that. I think that we need to develop our community to be able to be at a place where we could welcome a development of this size and have year-round residents that are adding to volunteerism and adding to the fabric of our community that we rely on so much. Those are my main considerations when looking at that. It's not, people are against it. It's the reasons that have been stated behind and the thoughtful consideration of what the consequences and perhaps unintended consequences of moving forward are. I'm not against a plan of this nature. I feel that we are not, as a community, at a place where we can accommodate that without unintended consequences that may actually be to our financial detriment and not to our benefit.
Just going back to that cost benefit analysis, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for bringing up some of the points, but if this was rezoned and it's going to go from industrial to a new zone C4, what are the industrial is the highest rated tax per frontage or per area that we have, and so are we as a village, if we do this rezoning, looking at taking what kind of a hit tax wise? Which, as Councillor Lang pointed out, we're, use all the taxation we can get at this point. Unfortunately, that's where we are at. So what are can someone enlighten me on tax implications here?
We would have 72 strata lots that would each have a tax bill attached to them. So those, and that would be
Through the chair. So that would be residential.
no, they would be RV sites, but they would have a land value attached to them. And it's the land value that creates the tax base. So the mill rate is based on the property value. So we would be increasing the property value on the site considerably. And that mill rate would then be applied to the site. So that I'm not a tax guy, I don't want to be a tax guy. But yeah,
Probably 5 to 6 times. No, it's probably 10 times. 10 times what I'm paying right now.
That's really good to the chair. From my perspective, I've been a councillor for a long time. I think there's kind of two aspects to this. One is, what is our role as a councillor? Our role as a councillor is to ensure that everybody gets a fair shake and whatever they want to do. So, we try to look at issues from both sides and often meet in the middle. So, each side has good points, and, this development, has some benefits and some not so great benefits. So the job, as councillors is to ensure that both sides are being listened to and to try and find a path through the middle, or, some way that we can, make both parties as happy as they can. The other aspect, when you talk about the economic, impact, we've just made a decision about the campground, saying she can't now use Ring Road because of overflow camping, which we know happens every summer. So this is an opportunity that we can, you know, address some of them. You know, we are a tourist town, so, you know, I understand all the, you know, the points that you made about housing and all of those kind of things, but you know, we are a tourist town and, you know, people do love coming to Kaslo, more and more people every year. So we're going to be faced with those problems, whether we have a development of that size or not, I believe. And we do have some work as far as trying to mitigate and address those challenges. So that's how I see it anyway.
That's a bit. Yeah, through the chair. So I want to like make a couple of points. Looking at Ecoscape's report, they talk about a lock block wall. So actually, so what I'd like to speak to right now is the public access along the river. And got the 30 meters. And I was encouraged to hear you talk about finding a way to do it like native, not that you said native shrubs, but I think you're going that way and using earthworms rather than, because if you recall, Ecospace's plan was a lock block wall with a 3-foot black security fence on top. And I would suggest that would be the most aided wall in Kaslo, if that were to be built. So also what the question I have is, when I look at so when you hire an environmental consultant because you wish to create a project, you wish to go forward with something and you know that it's required, they're working for you and they're going to look after your interests. What is really concerning to me is public access, an easygoing public access to the beach. And one that is, so that's my concern. Your concern is, you know, the viability of your property and the maintenance of your property. My concern is that bit along the river. So should there be a 200-year flood, and I agree the likelihood of casualties is it's not like Johnson's Landing, and that's not my particular concern. My particular concern would be if you had any kind of rigid structure, what would get washed away would be the public access. So that would be wrecked. You protect yours, and at the expense of should an event happen, and it's all loose affluvial substrate, right? So gets washed out into the lake. We get a whole new sandbar, but we've lost our public access.
Through the chair, a couple of points. One, the wall was put at that 30-meter line to define the two areas. The landscape architects and the environmentalists will work on what we can do to naturalize and to make that as soft a transition as we can. Your comment on the environmentalists are working for the developer, but they're professional biologists that have to abide and work with the ministries for the approvals, and they push back on. I'm a road guy. For me, green is you pave it and you paint it green. So the environmentalists are always working to try to soften, and so we work very closely with the environmentalists and the architect to ensure that we're meeting the provincial requirements, we're meeting the safety requirements, and we're protecting the public access. The washing away, if that land gets inundated, and the hydrologists have said that what's going to happen, it's not going to take the current creek bed plus 30 meters out and take it all away. It's not going to be a raging torrent. The water's just going to go up. It's gonna be flowing, but it's not gonna be white water because it's got a much larger area to be running. So it's not quite, you know, it's not a flush. It's more a rising in the water that is going to be occurring because you've given it such a much larger area. Because we're very close to the lake. So the water is backing up in the lake. And it's going to back up and potentially under an extreme condition, inundate that area, but it's not going to be white water in that 30-meter zone. So that's part of it. But we haven't.
One comment, it just be out of America, the other side is the same. The past on the other side is exactly, and everything you're saying will get caught up, and the world's going to turn mud. It's the same on the other side of the river as it is on this side of the river. So there's housing there, there's houses down the path today, there's a lot of activity there. So to say that it's a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit doom and gloom because it happens all the way around to the wraps right around into the peninsulas as well. Like that little peninsula that's right off the by the way. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
But we'll be working with the ecoscapes and the landscape architecture to ensure that we're naturalizing and trying to protect where we can, but enhance areas that have already been disturbed and put them back into the natural state. So the path that we're proposing within that 30 meters will have a wear on the surface, but we're not going to pave it. You know, it would likely be a crush or chip type path. It's a wearable surface, but it's not going to be a paved path, and it's going to be in that naturalized area.
Questions at this point? I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I've been looking at the OCP and land use bylaw amendment, two different things. OCP has the land designated as waterfront development. So it's not in keeping with the OCP because it is allowed, is from what I can read. You know, we've got to be careful about picking out certain segments that support a certain argument. It could be done on both sides, but that's what I'm seeing. And the land use amendment bylaw, it's because the land use bylaws were not updated after the completion of the OCP. So they're not in keeping. So the amendment bylaw is for land use, not anything to do with the OCP. To me, it sounds like that it's what they're proposing is an accepted use within the OCP designation that they have. And I think that's the problem. We're trying to pick little pieces out to support whatever arguments that we want to make. So I think we've got to make sure we take everything together, and that's why you know, the development timeline was put together. There are, like, when I'm looking at that development timeline, there are a lot of things that have to happen. And when we go back to the purchase and sale agreement, we had a number of conditions, and conditions are conditions. If they're not met, then the purchase and sale agreement falls apart, right? That's the purpose of conditions. If you don't meet this condition, then we're not going to sell. So we had, to my way of thinking, we have a lot of out clauses on both sides. If we don't do this or they don't do that, then it's done, right? And that's, you know, that might be a simplified way of looking at it, but you know, I think we've all dealt with land transactions. And that's how I understand it. So I do understand a lot of the arguments that are being made, and there's good answers being provided, and you know, and it's coming down to basically people's opinion of whether it should be an RV park or not, and whether is essentially how it's going to roll out. So question, you said it was going to be camping. They're going to be strata lots, and there are limitations, because my concerns are, you know, year-round habitation if it's a campground, because that does help. We know that there in certain times, it's not busy now, but there are times that our campground is overloaded, and we do need to have that overflow to accommodate the visitors that come for reunions and fall tournaments and events. And we've been trying to encourage additional events to support our business community. So tenting would be allowed.
Yes.
They're not all of the sites are going to be sold as strata lots. Some of them are going to be
Right.
maintained by yourself, and there will be somebody on site who will make sure that, you know, that it remains clean, and the visuals are going to be maintained for the community.
Yes, thank you, if I may answer that. So the stratified lots, my plan right now, and I've always said this, it is, I want to see families down there. I don't want to see one guy there for a year. I want to be able to commit a 5-year deal with the Jazz Fest to say, yes, you can bring 120 people there if the village allows it. I don't care. I want to support the community. I've spoken a lot, and you guys have heard me. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to see youth. This is just my dream of that campground. I want to see youth. I want to see young families. I want to see kids playing, and that's what builds communities. That's what I'm from my experience. So that's to answer your question. Yes, we will work with the village and Jazz Fest over the mushroom. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm here to support the community. So,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. And you have, it seems there are differing opinions on the placement of some of the sites that might be in the protection area where there should be no activity. And I don't totally understand that. I think and a lot of the studies that you have to have commissioned, and some of them you've done and some have to be refined. Those are also part of those conditions, right? So and it goes back to me, there's lots of areas where if things don't happen and the studies don't reveal what council thinks should be revealed, and that it's going to support what we need to happen, right? That it's not going to be detrimental to the environment. And those are also opportunities where, you know, you might have to do something different, correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
It's going to be a work in progress. It has to. It's not going to be something where, you know, and that's the thing with progress. Everybody wants a firm price. This is going to cost a year. How are we going to look here? Well, this is good. You know, what do you guys think? When we talk and work together, and that's what we try to do. It's I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I'm really excited about it, but because I really see myself, I see a positive thing for the community. I see a huge thing for the kids that can come, you know, just for the youth. And I see that one of the things with keeping is I want to see, like to see, I talk to people in the community, and it's not the specific group that's opposing it, but it's groups that are my aunt can't come. My cousin, your operator right now, not in there. She's echoing the comments that we don't have enough campgrounds. We don't have enough space for jazz fest. We don't have enough space for any activities. We're sold out for 5 months of the year every night. So where do they go? And then they end up pulling up on 8th Avenue, So I hear all those things too. And I see something that's structured, and it's actually meets the demands of what the village, in my opinion, needs is some structure. And it's not like a mass that we could put. I'm telling you right now, I could do the Vancouver thing and say, well, let's do 5 lots in one, and put 200 lots there. It's not the right thing to do in Kaslo. This, in my opinion, and I've said that to our consultants, instead of doing a lot half the size, let's do a nice lot. Let's do a big lot that everybody can enjoy it, that people can come, they can park there, they can move. It's not, they can bike there, how do we get there? So we've tried to look at this really realistically for Kaslo and specifically with a custom type of thing. I can tell you right now, I'm not scared, but I mean, we'll make it work, but but when you do all these things that aren't cookie cutter, you know the way the balance sheet looks. So it's like, just a second, it's gonna be expensive, but I don't care. I'm committed to it. And I think when we get to that development permit stage or the land usage, I've done these before where when you commit and you put up funds and like to your point, you don't meet this criteria that that told you present before, that's when the action comes over the business plan that sort of survives and doesn't. But yeah, so.
Right, so like, I have Councillor Bird first and then Councillor Beck.
Through the chair, it occurs to me a good idea might be to get the development timeline that you've written up and put that, make sure people can see it. It's what I've got in front of me, and it's kind of useful. Like we're all saying that there are many places along the process where, we're making sure that, the village's interests are looked after, and because that's our job. I just gotta, just for everyone, I'm a counselor. People should have some sense of where I'm coming from, and on a situation like this. And if I may, my family history is that my mother's family had their land appropriated by the federal government to make room for the St. Lawrence Seaway. That changed, that upended their lives. And personally, I actually have property myself in Quebec, which I own with my 6 siblings in common. And we've just been, it was a couple of years ago where the regional district declared our particular piece of property as a place of extreme biological and aesthetic interest, and we're not allowed to develop it. And we never were going to develop it, and we aren't going to develop it. But I do feel that that it's overbearing of municipalities to expropriate or in other ways make it impossible for someone to enjoy their land or to make a business on their land. I think that's government overreach, and because I've experienced it. Which is not to say I like this plan, because I really don't particularly, and I would like to see a lot more natural area around the river mouth specifically, but I do feel like the process that we have, and if we can share that timeline, that there are many places along that process where we can fine tune things. And finally, the last thing I want to say is I do believe it is our duty to consolidate and make it possible for, consolidate the land and make it possible that there is a public portion and that there is a private portion. And I think it should have been done 50 years ago. But I strongly believe that we need to consolidate the land and make it make sense. And, but I also don't want to give anything away. And if they're, you know, pending, land surveys, my strong feeling is that we do not sell any land. We keep as much land as we are entitled to in a consolidated form so that the public has access to the lake and, that we are protecting the birds, the riparian zones. Site.
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I agree with much of what Councillor Bird said. Were there not to be a possible land transfer, and this was something that you wanted to do on the land you own, I don't think that this would be nearly the discussion it is. I respect your land. I respect you. I appreciate how genuine you are, and I can tell that you do want to do what's best for the community. Okay. And so my question to you would be, as this is a new proposal to us, would you, I think having these conversations one-on-one, when it's not through lawyers and it's not through consultants and it's actually direct conversation between yourself and the community, you can actually get to the truth and to the core of it in a much quicker and expedited manner, which I think is what we're all trying to get to, one way or another, whatever the decision is. Would you be willing to meet with the community and people who have concerns and have a dialogue based on this new plan to be able to address some of their concerns, or at least hear them and have them understand from where you are why you may or may not be able to address those? Because I feel that were we to be able to have communication directly with you and not through the channels that we've been going through, that we would have a more representative discussion of what's best for our community, for yourself, for council, for everyone. Would you be willing to be a part of a conversation such as that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we've been here probably, we spent a lot of time, you know, here and going over it, and so it wouldn't change. We've always been available, we'll always be available. We're always open to discussion, doing things that benefit everyone. The only thing, to Councillor Bird's point of view, I would, this land is private to David's point of view, not point of view, it's illegal. That's why I don't think, like, it's pretty point blank, you can fact check that. Turning roads into parks can't do that. So I think there's a lot of, like, throwing something open sticks on the wall kind of thing, and doesn't. And then I go like, you know, let's all face it. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't know. I hear we need, you know, we need more campgrounds, we need more money, and this isn't a money thing, but it would give it 10 times more money, if not more. So all these things are adding up over here, and over here, I mean, if I were to say of the, say there's 150 people that are on opposing this, 200 or 189, 204, whatever the numbers. Of those people, how many guys have you put down on that? When we went down there, how many people, you guys have been down in that land for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Why is this such a big deal now? I have paid taxes with my family for 30-some years. It's millions of dollars. And it's, I don't understand, to your point, Councillor, why all of a sudden it's, you take the private out of it. I mean, in my opinion, personally, you become communist. And it's wrong. And I'm trying to say, I'll work with, we want to work with the village as much as we can, and really we have. So, to answer your question again, there's open arms. We'll discuss whatever we need to try to get this done, because I have a burning desire, which I explained at the open house. The open house, it wasn't like, these things are all at all costs, keeping in mind. And it's my mind, I don't 100% keep. But And it's very, it's been very, very expensive. So the reason, the other thing I'd like to, and if do I have time to keep going?
Yeah.
Or is it okay?
No, I think Councilor Brown has asked a question.
Yeah.
I just. That. Council and previous CEOs always trust us, we're gonna get there, and we wanna know what your plans are. Which I have no problem doing before the plans are given and a development permit or a zone change is granted. So we've tried to, it's been a long time, I think it's close to 5 years, if not a little bit more, that we were working on this. And this isn't going to fit anybody, but in my opinion, like nobody but the village and its residents. This is no benefit to me personally. None, zero. I'm not gonna, this is, if we do a balance sheet, this thing ain't gonna look good. I have a dream, I love Kaslo, I am 100%. I see the youth, I met someone, I met a girl that I played spin ball with when I was 13 years old, that is that's the kind of, she gave me the biggest hug I haven't seen her in 42 years. And like the people in Kaslo it's a very, very, very close to my heart. My grandfather came here, my father came here, about kids here. My grandfather was a quarter in the area, he was a surgeon in Trail. I was born in Trail. There's what Councilor had said, I'm 100% right. There's no ill intentions here. I want to see this thing good for everyone. So with open arms again, it's short and I'm sorry, everyone.
I appreciate it. Through the chair, please correct me, Councillor Berg, if I am incorrect, but I believe what you're saying is instead of a transfer of funds in which you purchase some of the land and we get funds, would you consider the thought exercise of actually having that be land and not funds? So the land that we would transfer, the equivalent of that acreage or whatever it would then be provided to the public access part, so that it wasn't necessarily a transfer of funds, but that the village would retain the amount of acreage that we have currently. You would get the acreage you need in order to be able to do your plan, and the village would then continue to own the equivalent amount of assets, if not, having those funds.
That's great question. It's like any business. If you're at 80% and making 20, you're at a net zero. So if we're at 50 camp spaces or 52, anything that sustains my signing of a document that says I will pay this much at this point, you pay this much at that point, you have to pay the taxes, you collect each lot will pay everything we're going to do. I can't do that because there's no money there. So that's why Dave is suggesting it's got to make, this is the problem in my opinion with governments, is that it's just like if this was a private business, I mean, we wouldn't even have this conversation. It would be build it, we need more tax money, we don't have enough spots. I mean, next question is what's going on. And that's the way, but it's like, that part's frustrating, but I understand it. And I felt it was entity before where, it's difficult to get across the line. Some don't have a lot to do. So, I mean, I can, again, I'd be willing, no problem to sit down and discuss anything with the books, no problem.
Through the chair, one of the things related to the land, and it's something that we haven't pursued because we thought we were doing something that was mutually beneficial. the land that we're discussing is rights of ways that were put in place to service 188 single family lots. The transfer of those rights of ways to the adjoining parcels are because we're looking at changing the land use so that it's not providing the direct access to the single family lots. So I don't think it's as easy as just saying it's a, we need 5 acres. You've got 5 acres, we'll just swap land. It's not, that's how it would normally work if it wasn't a plan drawn up in London in 1980 or 1893. That doesn't make any sense. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a consolidation of private and public lands that are mutually beneficial. And we have a net gain in those rights of ways that were fully intended to service the lots that are there now anyway. So I think we're being very generous in saying we'll buy that land. We've had appraisers assess it, and we'll transfer funds. But it's not the village's land in a sense, in that it's only the village's land to provide access to the adjoining properties. And if you're not providing access to any properties, then there's a legal argument that it's not your land. You shouldn't have taken it in the first place. And you need to pay back all the taxes that have been paid on that land, because the taxes have been paid on those public rights of ways as well, because it's one integral parcel. So it can get very messy if you try to make it fully equitable. And we're not suggesting to make it we're trying to do what's in the best interest of both parties. And that's why we've taken the approach that we have. And we think it's fair and equitable, but that's ultimately council's decision.
Yes, through the chair. Would access from village land to the foreshore fill that requirement of providing a pathway? You know, it's not necessarily to a private piece of land, but it would then provide access to the lake, similarly to what we're trying to do along the river.
So are you thinking at the south end?
Yeah, well, with some of the right of ways. Right now, you're saying that the right of ways, their only purpose would be to access these non-existent 180 whatever.
No, they're
plots.
they're titled.
Sure, but I mean, there's no homes, there's no buildings, there's no roads. And would, and perhaps, you know, we were not able to answer this, maybe it's a thought exercise, but would not the access, were it to be created so that they could use those or public, you know, members of the public could use those right of ways to access the foreshore, would that not then fulfill the requirement of providing a path, you know, for transportation for people to arrive at a destination? You know, it's not necessarily a private piece of land, it's a public foreshore that it would provide that access to. So it would still be used for, you know, just for access.
Through the chair, those public rights of ways, one of them is about 60 to 70% slope, and the other one's about 50% slope.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to create within a 20-meter wide right of way. You're not going to be able to provide any reasonable form of public access. It's multiple stairs. It's not that there's not going to be anything that's going to be any wheelchair accessible. It's not going to be for bikes. It's just going to be. And I've done projects that have had stairways in them that they're never used. They're not connecting to anything. The only thing we have had discussion about providing a right of way for a water line with the golf course, and maybe that something could be done as a path that could provide access to the golf course. But anything to the south of where we're proposing the access which is along the riverfront. There's no connectivity to there's no neighborhood that's connecting to that. Everyone's coming from the village. They would be crossing the bridge, they'd be going past the golf course and working their way back the other way. It doesn't, from a planning standpoint, there's no benefit in providing additional connections. The only one that would make potential sense, and we've talked about it, is providing a connection to the golf course for access. But as far as public access, the desired line is along the river to the lake. It's the way we look at it.
Any other questions from council? You don't want me to look at you because this is council's decision, right?
I think just try to prompt council, make sure there's no questions left after our visitors leave. So one of the things I've heard council talk about is concerns with Bearland strata. I don't know if there's any members of council that want to bite on it. If that's still a concern, or if they have questions about what is Bearland strata and why are we using it?
Council Bird?
Through the chair, I believe that that would be one of the, in the development timeline, whether council, see, this is where it's true. I'm not sure if we have the authority to say this piece of property can or cannot have strata title, or half of it can, or if we have the ability as council to, in the one of the, either the zoning bylaw or the subdivision, do we have any power to make if it's private land, can you make legislation to say strata title is out, is acceptable to a certain degree or not, you know, or acceptable to 100%? I don't know. I assumed that at some stage that would be something that we could be talking about, but we don't necessarily have to talk about it now if the purchase and sale agreement, if it's one of those conditions of the purchase and sale agreement, then we get to that point where we've discussed it.
The chair, so I believe the developer is looking for Bearland strata to be one of their conditions. So that's what they desire for their development to be viable. But like beg the question, why do you ask? What's your concern with Bearland strata? And it's not so much for my interest, just for the developer to hear.
Through the chair, because I like to see a campground. Campgrounds, I think, are something that is needed around here. And even though, I mean, if it becomes entirely Bearland strata, then it becomes an exclusive, you know, like private dwellings for seasonal use for certain people. But I would like to be able to have the influence to say that a certain degree of the area should be available for campers in the same way that the Mirror Lake is available for campers and our own campground, rather than it being eventually all sold off into little pieces as an exclusive gated community. That's why.
Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, my concerns around strata are, it leaves it up to the individual owner as to whether they allow it to be used or not. I agree, we do need to expand our camping. We do need to be able to provide all of our tourist areas to come to. And strata makes it so that it is at the discretion of the owner as to whether or not they create that capacity or not. Whereas were it to be a campground, there's certainty as to our capacity being able to be expanded for weekends and families and all of the things you were saying. Once it becomes a strata, that certainty is gone. It's at the, kindness or at the financial, whatever reasons that they choose to be able to make it available. They could say, I'm only going to be there a month of the year and the rest it's going to sit empty. That'd be within their purview to do. So the strata brings in uncertainty as to whether our objective will be met. And that's why I have concerns around the strata aspect.
So again, you can deal with that through contract. So even though they're stratified, if it's 60-40, if it's 100%, which I don't see track, we don't need guys coming in and out of there. I mean, it's risk mitigation, it's business, it's private, there's all those reasons, and they are there. And I'm not going to be yes, but I mean, the bottom line is you want, I would suggest we sit down and get to that point and say, let's do a contract with, this many years, this is the term, this is what I'm thinking, right? And then we deal with it that way, so that it's not just if the wind blows that month or that year. So there's a term. That's what I would suggest.
Councillor Leaford?
Through the chair. I guess I'm unclear as to what would be the difference than if somebody bought a house in Kaslo but only came and lived here for a month of the year. I mean, as a village, we're looking, if they're going to be stratified lots and we're getting taxation on each one, then for me, that's good. And, you also talked about, the burden on businesses and things. So if someone's only coming for a month of the year, then it's less burden on business. So I think there's pros and cons for both sides.
I just had a thought about the strata. Is there the ability to limit the ownership or who it gets sold to? So if where I'm going is the lack of accommodation for the seasonal workforce that we need. They don't have anywhere. So, there's I would say that there's nothing stopping a local business from purchasing one of those strata lots and having a unit on there for their staff. And then that perhaps that if that business no longer wanted it, that there's a condition that it has to go to another local entity so that it doesn't get, because there seems to be concern with people from the city coming just to enjoy it and bringing their groceries in from out of town and not supporting the local economy. But that, I don't know whether that's something that could be done.
Funny answer. Suggest I can't stand people go to Walmart, Costco. I'm a local small town guy. I like supporting local. I don't care if it's $1 more. I want to buy from them. And that would be something that we would discuss. We can't force people. No. That's all part of the deal. You've got to support the local in order to be able to come here in order to some points that councillors have brought up. There is no. It's not an endless pit. It's these municipalities and villages, they have to, support business in order to survive, to be honest with you, in my opinion. So I think that, again, that's something where, for us to say, like, I'm not a philosopher, but our kids or our parents or anybody, I didn't turn out the way I thought. I mean, this whole thing is going to be we got to mold it. We got to get feedback from the council. We got to feedback from, okay, well, let's try to maybe do this. And then if it doesn't work, then now what do we do? So if it limits the business, and then it limits Kaslo. It's not, it's a hand-in-hand thing. So I, again, would just suggest that it would be a work in progress. We would just keep working together to start till we formulate something. Is it going to be something that's forever? If it doesn't work and there's an issue, then we got to change it. And maybe in a year or too, and that's, goes without saying, that they try to kind of concrete it right now to say, well, it's gonna be like this, or it's the counselor Leafwood, is to her point, it's a hell of a point in my opinion, where she gives some really good examples where it's day and day, yin and yang. So it's, you can throw that in with this as well. It's a work in progress, and again, we'll be open arms trying to, work together to make something that we can all be proud of.
I think what council is trying to do is trying to channel the questions and the concerns of members of the public into, and I think our job is to weigh all of the information. We've got what we can do legally and through planning processes. And then we've got, it tugs at the heartstrings, right? Because everybody gets attached. So, and a lot of people are afraid of change. And yeah. So for tonight, there was a suggestion by Councillor Brown that that perhaps if you were willing to have an open house or however that's structured. So, and I guess council would have to be part of that, and we would, and what would we want as a result of that, right? And there was a survey done at the last one, but that was so early days. Things have changed since then. Yeah, I'm just not sure how things would, what the end result would be of that. Because we've got to have a destination in mind. If we're starting down a path where we've got to have a destination, and it's all well and good, but what information do we want that open house to produce for us, to give us enough information to perhaps make a decision? If it's not going to do that, then other than having people be able to vent, then what's, if it's an honest, respectful exchange that these are our concerns, and that's what I would like to see. But we can't control what others say and do, and it would not be our meeting, it would be QP's meeting. So
yeah, I think that the process, even though I agree with Councillor Brown, I think that the communication's been open. I think that the structure's there. I think actually that the council's it's been a long time, but I think it's done a good job trying to mitigate and be fair to everybody. I think that all the information is actually out there. It's very, very, this isn't rocket science. I mean, it's in my opinion. If there's any questions, we can come and sit around the table informally and discuss something specific, but the process that we had before, right, wrong, and different, was channeled, was advertised. We worked on it. It wasn't better to comment. It was 2.5 years in this room working with Ian. This wasn't early. So it's just, I think what it is a shock and awe thing. I think that because my family and myself now is the allowed access and never ever did anything stupid, not that we ever would. Why I call it stupid, as far as we never trespassed and we never did anything like that through that land that's rightfully families. We've always stayed on the high road. So I would say that everything we've done has been open book. We haven't tried to hide anything. I think that there's been some spaghetti thrown on the wall and that doesn't stick. So for some reason, people just get asphyxiated. And again, I think we've used this forgotten. That's the part that I really like. the goddamn youth are our future. They need to be given opportunities, and with no growth. And, you know, I worry about Kaslo. It's not just this generation. There's guys that fish for years here, where and locals where there, you know, there is issues with the buildings, and there is issues with the camping space and all these things, but they sit on, in my opinion, they sit on their hands and do nothing is the answer. But to get back to would I be willing to have another open house, I don't think it would do it. I would if I thought it honestly, if I thought it would be good, I would do it. But all the information's out there. So if we wanted to have some formal meeting and talk to a specific group about everything, I think Dave and I tonight have had an opportunity to clarify what a street is legally, what if you can turn it into a park or not. All the questions that you've answered. I think to go from here, I think the council needs to come back to us, in my opinion, respectfully and say, listen, this is what the next steps can be. Are you in? You want to, this is what we want. And then I'm going to say yeah or no. But I want to say yes because I want to up front, because I want to work with you. And that's that. So I know it's, I'm not trying to assert yes or no, but I don't think that that specific posted open house where everybody's there and it's the same thing. If this guy wants this and he's pissed off because we get all this stuff that's like, it's not serving the actual benefits of the village and the community at large versus 4, 5, or 6, or 10 things or 50. And the people, the silent people, I've heard that too. And there's a lot of people don't want to come down here and, you know, and wrongfully so, and they're the first ones that complain, right, in a democratic society. But there's a lot of people that are very supportive of this, and they realize that the village doesn't need this. So, not just for a filler, but you know, for all the reasons we all stated tonight. So, I'll keep communicating. I keep coming back here and I'm invited. I've never said no, and I'm asking Rob, you can get another meeting as we can. So I would just suggest that the process of council has been very good. And I think we just keep going on that path, in my opinion. But if there's a special meeting or anything you think is of value, then I would do it.
Councilor Brown?
Through the chair, to be clear, the value of the meeting for me, at the beginning of this meeting today, there were multiple questions asked from the public. We were not able to answer those because they were not ours to answer. And I feel like some of those perhaps weren't answered because they were separate from a question period and this. And I see the value in that it's a back and forth conversation with the community directly to you, where they can ask a question of you and you can answer. It's not through the mayor, it's not through council, and it can be more genuine when it's not held through Robert's rules and all of the constraints of a council meeting. So I see the benefit, and I understand what you're saying too, because I don't think that any of us need another meeting where nothing comes of it and we're all just getting together to do the same thing that we've been doing. That doesn't move anything forward in any way. But I do feel like the community would feel more heard if they were to ask a question of you and not Ed or you know, anybody else on your team, and be able to just have a genuine conversation with you where you can answer questions. Perhaps if things come up that you hadn't considered, you can consider those things, or vice versa. If there are things that hadn't been considered by the public, that they have an opportunity to consider those things. And in terms of the youth, I'll just say that due to your family's generosity, my son is homeschooled and he was able to do nature programs that were on that property and walk through and be able to learn about all of the different plants and learn about all of the different animals and you know, aquatic life. And there was a huge benefit to that property that's not necessarily economic. There's social benefit, there's all sorts of benefits to the youth of that property in all of its different forms. And so I do appreciate the naturalization that you're bringing and how you've expanded all of the trees and all of the plants and looking at natural shrubs, because that really is an important aspect. And while the economic future of our youth is at the forefront, we want to make sure they have a community to be able to thrive within. We also want to make sure that we're passing them a community that is as good, if not better, than what we were handed. And I think that a hard part for the public is that your family's been so generous, it almost feels like it's Kaslo's. It's not. It isn't Kaslo's, it's your family's. But because you've been so generous, generation after generation have been going down there and fishing and going down there with their family and having picnics and enjoying all the trees and the nature and the wildlife to the point where it feels like it's part of Kaslo. And so some of the proposals of, you know, putting down cement or putting down whatever the things are in order to create this, create that change that I don't know that people really thought a ton about how this was your private land, because you've been not doing trespassing, you've been providing it as a public service to the public to be able to enjoy. And so I think having that conversation out in the open can help to create more transparency and more of a shared understanding so that we're moving forward, perhaps removing some barriers or identifying ones that we maybe can work together to be able to remove. I believe that with your genuine nature and your desire to do what's best for our community, there's a lot of places that we're going to meet up. And there's a lot of areas that we can move forward with something that will be great for our community, for people who want to visit our community. And so that is why I asked for another meeting. It's not so that people can come and yell and scream and say the same things that they've always done. It's so that we can have an opportunity to exercise civil discourse where we come in a respectful manner and bring our considerations and have that give and take, so that we can start moving forward and past some of the echo chamber that we've been in, where we hear similar concerns over and over, and we hear similar ways to address those from your side as well over and over, and where we can actually be able to get to the core of some of these issues and start moving forward.
So, to the chair, so we did a public open house in November of 2023. It was well attended. We recorded all of the comments we received. We created a package. We tried to work and address as many of those comments as we could. And the next time we were in town, we were at the Home Hardware and there was a petition for the project.
For project?
Against a petition against the project.
Okay.
And we're like, well, why did we come and spend, we were in the community hall for 5 hours, talking to a lot of people. I mean, there was people that weren't in agreement, people that were in agreement, but it was a very civil discourse. It was a very good discussion. We had a lot of information by that time because we'd been on the project for over 2 years. And I think we took away what a lot of the concerns were, but we obviously didn't please everyone, because the next time we're down, we saw there was a petition. So I'm not certain we can. I'm more than happy to do another public hearing or public presentation on behalf of QB project. But I don't know that we'll get. People will fill out the questionnaires, provide all the, but I don't know that they'll be much different than what we did last November. In that all of these things that we're currently talking about were brought up at that time. So I'm not saying that we don't do it again, but I don't know that we're going to get by doing it again, are we going to get a different result? Because since that time, an offer was made to purchase the property. The property is not for sale. So there are certain lines in the sand that we're not changing. So I don't we don't need to talk about selling property anymore,
Yep,
because
fair
it's
enough.
not for sale.
Yep.
So those things are pretty clear.
Mhm.
We can have another public open house, but I don't know that the comments for and against will be much different.
I'm gonna go to Councillor Manning and see, because he hasn't spoken one.
Yes, through the chair. I think we have to respect these gentlemen's commitment to time. I don't think it's fair to ask them to keep coming back over and over and over again, but I'd like to propose an alternative. If there's people out there in the public that are still confused about what this project entails or have questions about certain issues, maybe if they submitted them to the village and then we took them and forward them to these guys and they could answer the questions, and then we would make sure that the answers were again returned to the question, to the people that submitted the questions. I just don't, I agree, another public hearing is not gonna accomplish a whole lot. And I think tonight's been very productive. I think a lot of information's been exchanged. But if there's people, like I say, if there's people out there that have questions, if they submitted them in writing, maybe they could get their answers that way.
I'll go back to you, Councillor Brown.
To the chair, a few things come up. One, admittedly, by both of you, this is a different plan than what was talked about in 2023, November 2023, a couple of years ago. I guess I would also highlight that I don't think that having questions go through us is going to create anything different, because that's been the process we've been working with. The value in this would be the direct connection. So for me, I guess I would see the value in at that meeting in November 2023. Ed did a lot of the talking. Dale did do some of the talking and some of the more clear points, I thought, because you can cut right through it. And I guess that's where, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but that's where I see the value, is being able to have direct connection to Dale himself, to our community members, so that there would be, you know, not multiple middlemen in the middle trying to convey what the message is, but instead being able to actually look you in the eye and get a sense of, you know, what their concerns are, where that stands, and, you know, and for them to understand why you may or may not be able to address that concern. I also think that shouldn't necessarily be at your expense. You have already put in more towards this, you know, especially in terms of community engagement. I think that community members would be more than willing to be able to incur any expense that would be, because I don't think that that's something that, you know, like you said, you have, you know, done that due diligence. So that's all I wanted to say.
I think that's a very generous offer to make on behalf of the
I have
community.
had
But I think-
other people not said to me that that's something that existed. I would put that forward.
without a full understanding of what the costs could actually be to get two people from out of town and put them up for a few nights.
I guess I was thinking the rental of the facility and those.
So all of probably the rental of the facility is what the minimal costs that of that entire process, because we know what it costs to put on a meeting. But I just wanted to address my comment about the open house, first one being early in the process. For the public, it was early in the process because you had been going through that with staff, and even council didn't have a proposal on the table until shortly before that time. So that's why I referred to it as being early. For the public, it was early. It was somewhat their first introduction to the proposal. So it's like they're coming late to the game and they were trying to play catch up at that point. So I just wanted to make that distinction, just for the benefit of the community, because they haven't been, and the council hadn't been because the communication had been with staff. Because it had to be to work out the necessary details before it came to us.
Chair, so it was early in the process, but it was for the land use discussion.
Yeah.
So would we be coming back and presenting the land use again? Because that's where it talks to the development permit side of it.
Right.
We've got a lot, if we're granted the land use that we've been asked for, we have a lot of work to do to prepare a development permit application that meets all of the needs of council. I think it might be more beneficial for us to come back and do a presentation related to a development permit on a given land use. We still don't have land use. So I'm not that I'm reluctant to come back, but I'm reluctant to come back for the same reason. The reason would be the plan we presented in November. It's the same plan from a land use standpoint. This plan's more refined, but I don't know that it's going to be beneficial for us to come again with another more refined plan, and we still don't have an answer on the land use. And that's the difficulty we're struggling is we keep coming back and trying to address as many of the concerns as we can, but we still don't have a land use agreement. And I think it may be more beneficial if we can get to knowing what the land use is, then the costs that are going to be incurred, it's not a guarantee, but it's a closer, at least now we're working to a goalpost. Right now, it's pretty tough because our goalposts are moving because we don't have a land use. And that's part of the difficulty. So I'm not saying that it's not beneficial to come back and present a plan. Because the plan's presented as part of the development permit process, as opposed to a land use process. Because we don't have land use at this point. And that's where I see it as being, how many times do we come back to present the same information related to land use? And we're no closer to the goalpost. And that's part of the difficulty in that. So yes, it was early in the process, but it was part,
Right.
Land use is early in the process.
Right.
And we still, we've been working diligently and we still don't have land use. So that's where it gets difficult for us, is that it's we'd love to be discussing all of the development permit, because there's a number, it's a big list, and we'd be more than happy to present a draft or whatever process, whatever mechanism that works best for council. But I'm reluctant to come just land use has been decided yet. And it would be very helpful for going forward, knowing that at least we're working on the same song sheet from land use, and then we can define all those elements of that.
So essentially, we've been skipping ahead and asking you to address things that we haven't even agreed to allow you to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And it's hard to get, because we want to look at the whole package, but it does have that series of steps which is outlined, but we know what you want to do, and we're trying to make sure that everything is represented properly for the community with, and I can see both sides there, and I can see where you're coming from. I hadn't heard it exactly like that you're dealing with the hypothetical right now. All right. So, Councillor Lamb.
We're going on to 3 hours now, and I need to attend to some personal matters. So I'm hoping that a motion to adjourn is somewhere coming up in the near future.
Okay. Well, you can feel free because I think we are covering the same ground, the same as, so feel free to make a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make that.
Point of order,
Oh, yep.
do we not have to rise and report from?
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to delay this.
Oh, okay.
No,
All right. Sorry. All right. Okay. The recommendation is that the committee, well, we're not reporting, we're just rise from committee of the whole, right? Because there's nothing that we're reporting. So, that Councillor rise from committee of the whole. Councillor Bird and Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Now you can adjourn the meeting, Councillor Lang. So that would be adjourned at 8:55.